Chapter 16 of Mental Fascination. Recording by Sandra Knight. www.sandraknight.net. Mental Fascination by William Walker Atkinson. Chapter 16. Personal Atmosphere. The mentative force emanating from each individual creates a mental atmosphere around him which often extends a considerable distance from his body, especially in the case of strong individuals, whose mental atmosphere is felt when they enter a room or public place. Persons whose personality is weaker have a mental atmosphere extending only a few inches from their bodies, and which is scarcely perceptible to those coming in contact with them. The positive aura. The man of positive individuality, our man who feels himself to be a living electromagnet, carries with him an aura of mental atmosphere of positive strength, which is plainly felt by those coming in contact with him. People say about such a man that he has something about him which impresses them, but which they fail to understand. It will be worth your while to study this mental atmosphere of some strong men with whom you come in contact, for now that you have the secret of the matter, that you may take some valuable lessons from him. The air about strong individuals. As I've said in my Mental Magic, I cannot very well describe this air to you, for unless you have met a man of this kind you will not understand it. But it is a very different thing from the pompous, self-sufficient, self-important, fussy air and demeanor manifested by the cheap imitators of these great men. The magnetic man does not tell you how great or smart or important he is. He leaves that for his cheap imitators. He makes you feel his strength by his very manner and atmosphere without saying a word. He has that something about him that people notice and wonder at. And that something comes from his conscious or unconscious relation to the Universal Will. Individuality, not personality. In the above paragraph I have pointed out to the student the kernel of the matter. The little fellow who thinks he is one of the big ones believes that his strength comes from his personality, and sooner or later he trips himself up because of this error. But the real big ones of life know better. They may not understand it all, but some way they feel that there is a something back of them from which they are able to draw strength and power, and believing this they are filled with courage and daring, and radiate their strength on all sides. They may talk of their lucky star, or special providence, or else believe themselves to be specially favored of God, as is the case with at least one of the big men of modern finance. But no matter what may be their special interpretations of this something, they all recognize its existence and trust to it. And this conviction and realization gives to the strong individuals that air of calm, positive power and self-confidence that impresses those with whom they come in contact, and which forms their mental atmosphere. Back to first principles. And in giving you instructions in the art of building for yourselves a positive mental atmosphere, I can do no better than to refer you back to the first principles, and again bid you to realize that you are a dynamic focus, a center of force in the great Universal Will, having the dual attribute of willpower and desire force. In short, that you are a living electromagnet. Realization brings power. If you will but get this realization firmly fixed in your mind, you will automatically create for yourself a most positive mental atmosphere that will be felt by all with whom you come in contact. So, first, last, and all the time, build up this realization. Say to yourself, I am a living electromagnet. Think it out, dream it out, act it out. And of course, always realize what all this means. You are the electromagnet through which is pouring the Universal Willpower, and in the degree that you will allow the current to so flow through you, so will be the power you are able to manifest. How to use the realization. When you wish to manifest a special degree of power, just let this statement flame out in vivid letters in your mind. When you feel that you are being approached by some other person of strong will, whom you do not wish to influence you, just bring this statement into effect, and you will actually see the effect of it upon the other person. He will feel your strong mental atmosphere and will cease to try to affect you. And even when there is no special need for making the statement of power, it will be well for you to keep it burning bright within you, for by so doing you strengthen your realization, and your mental atmosphere reflects the inner mental state. Special mental atmospheres. So much for the general mental atmosphere. As we proceed, we shall see that the electromagnetic individual creates special mental atmospheres around him by his mental states, depending upon his will or desire at the time. Not only does his will and desire affect other persons directly by means of mental currents, but mentative induction is also set up by the mental atmosphere without any special effort on his part. Maintain your positivity. In this place I wish to call your attention to the importance of always maintaining your positivity as a means of mental training. Do not allow yourself to become negative to others, even where there is nothing lost by doing so, for by this neglect you create a negative habit which will cause you trouble to overcome later. If a person comes into your presence whose personality seems likely to dominate or overpower yours, by all means interpose a mental resistance right then and there. It is not necessary for you to manifest the same in words, for that would make you ridiculous in many cases, nor is it necessary for you to give any special physical expression to your mental state. Simply look the person in the eye, carelessly and without any special effort, at the same time making the mental statement, "I am a living electromagnet," and you will find that your positivity will rise until it is equal with his, and your feeling of negativity will disappear. In exceptional cases you may add mentally, "I am as positive as you." How to create positive auras. It will be well for you to practice the creation of special mental atmospheres in order to establish the habit, and thus render it easier to avail yourself of the same on special occasions. Opportunities of all kinds will present themselves to you in everyday life. The gist of the matter is to surround yourself with a mental aura of such a nature that people will act toward you as you wish them to do. A few examples may help you to get a clearer idea of what I mean, so I herewith give you the same. An interesting example. I know a lady living in Chicago who was constantly complaining that people were always running over her on State Street, the crowded retail street of the great western metropolis. She said that they were always crowding her off the sidewalk and pushing, bumping, and jostling her in a most annoying manner. She asked me for instructions as to what thought she should use to prevent individuals from so acting. I answered that I did not think it was necessary to consider the separate individuals in the case, but that she should treat the crowd as a whole by means of a protective mental atmosphere. I then advised her to build up a mental atmosphere around this statement: "People respect my rights. They will not unduly impose on me in the street. I deny the power of the crowd to impose on me." And she followed this advice, and in a short time had built up a protective mental atmosphere which acted almost magically upon the crowd, who stepped aside and gave her a full right of way on the pavement. She would simply go on her way calmly, serenely, and undisturbed, and the crowd let her alone. I must add that I think that the original trouble arose from a subconscious dislike to the crowds and an extreme shrinking from people, the result being that this dislike acted almost as does fear, and really attracted to her the inference of people. The new mental atmosphere dispelled the old one and gave her an additional positivity beside. Fear as an attracting force. In this connection, I would call your attention to that remarkable psychological fact that fear acts as an attracting force, in a negative way. If you want a thing very much, you attract it to you, and if you fear it very much, you do likewise. This apparent contradiction has bothered many students of the subject, but it seems very plain to me. I think the explanation is that in both cases a vivid mental picture is held. And the attraction results along the line of visualization, which always tends to materialize the mental image. Do you see what I mean? Think over it a bit and you will see it plainly. The transformation of a human doormat. Another case from actual experience. Another lady, also a resident of Chicago, complained that the clerks in the great department stores would not treat her courteously, but would keep her waiting without paying her any attention, and in other ways would treat her like a human doormat. She said she would not have minded this so much if other women were treated likewise, but that while she was ignored, others would receive the greatest attention, the clerks falling over themselves to wait upon them. I told her that she had gradually built up around her a mental atmosphere of expectancy, that she had fallen into the habit of expecting such treatment, and consequently she got what she expected. I think that in the beginning she had manifested a timid, humble, meek, worm of the dust state of mind when she entered the big stores, which somewhat overawed her, and then, after this drew upon her the neglect of the clerks, who seemed very ready to wipe their feet on human doormats, she grew to regularly expect the shabby treatment. It was not a matter of dress or anything of that kind, for she dressed well, and, for that matter, I know women who dress poorly who never got any such treatment, for they understand the underlying mental laws too well for that. It was simply a matter of a negative mental atmosphere, as many of you will clearly see. How the change occurred. Well, I told her to brace up and create a new mental atmosphere around this general statement. The clerks like me. They like to wait on me. They give me every attention. They do this because they like me, and also because I insist upon it as my right. The charm worked in a short time, and now the good lady reports that the clerks not only treat her well, but even take the trouble to call her attention to desirable selections, special bargains, and all the rest of it. The cure was perfect. An analysis. I call your attention to the above statement. Please note that the first part of it operated along the lines of desire force, and the latter part along the lines of willpower. The statement of the first mentioned lady, the one who objected to street crowding, was altogether along the lines of willpower. I ask the students to study and dissect each of these cases, because by doing so they will be able to apply the principles in cases coming under their own observation, and also in their own cases. End of Chapter 16. Recording by Sandra Knight. www.sandraknight.net